Hail Santa, a forbidden love story by Sullivan Cohen. An open letter to Watchtower. I wish there was no need for books like Hail Santa to be written. I wish there was no need to constantly make an effort to expose the facts about CSA cover-ups, the mishandling of sexual assault cases, and the heartless discrimination of ex-members. But unfortunately, there is a need. There is a need for every voice who can to speak up and make it clear that we cannot and will not allow a corrupt, man-made organization to continue to abuse our children. Your indifference to true wrongdoing has led to the suffering of thousands, even millions, and we, the family and friends of your victims, refuse to stand by while you continue to tear lives apart. We cannot and will not take it any longer. This is not about God. It is not about the Bible. It is not about spirituality. This is about real people's lives being played with and destroyed because of your misguided interpretations of ancient texts. My final prayer is that the tower falls with anything but grace. Sullivan Cohen. Introduction. I watched my dad put pen to paper, Bible by his side, as he quoted scripture in the most nonchalant manner I could imagine, his tongue clicking with a voice I could hardly hear as he repeated every word under his breath. "What you doin'?" I asked. He paused, turned to me, and gave me a warm smile. He reached out for me, propped me on his lap, and pointed to the pinkish page. "You know how there's a rainstorm today, so we can't go witnessing? Papa is witnessing right now from this room by writing letters." "How's writing letters witnessing?" "Well, you know how we go door to door and deliver the spiritual food to everyone that way? This is spiritual food delivery through the mail." "Why don't we just do it this way all the time? Then people can't yell at us anymore." "Well, this isn't a replacement for spiritual food delivery. It's just a short-term solution so Papa can keep his hours up." "Oh, okay." I didn't want to admit that I had lost interest, but Dad had already popped me off his lap and backed onto the floor. "This letter is going to a man named Earl McClare. He just lost his wife, Franny." "How do you know that?" "I read her obituary this morning. In lieu of flowers, I'm sending spiritual food and a chance for him to see his loving wife again." I continued to watch as he carefully folded the paper up and grabbed a bright yellow envelope to slide the pink page into. I use these nice bright envelopes to catch their eye so they know it's personal and not a bill or an ad. That way, they open it first. "How will you know if they read it?" "That's not for me to know, but Jehovah will be watching. Jehovah will take all the joy and glory from watching Mr. McClare open this letter." He closed it up, sealed it with a clean lick, and set it atop a pile of 20, maybe 30 or more, identical yellow envelopes, all filled with spiritual meals for the hungry, the grieving, and the suffering brothers and sisters to be. Chapter 1. Baptism. My palms were pouring sweat like I had fire hoses implanted in my pores. My heart was racing so fast it could put Secretariat to shame. My mouth felt dry. I wanted words to come out, but they wouldn't. "Kai," my father's voice sputtered out from beside me. "Is there a problem?" "No, I'll say it. Just, you're baptized now, Kai. Can't just be freezing up when asked to say a prayer." My sister rolled her eyes, her plate of chicken curry steaming up her glasses as she waited on me. "Can you hurry up? I'm starving." I gulped, sat up straight, and bowed my head. "Dear Jehovah God in heaven, we come before you." I huffed a quick sigh to relieve the swelling feeling in my chest. "We come before you," I repeated, gave myself some time to come up with more words to sacrifice on the altar of my tongue before God. "To thank you for these meals you have provided us, and for the companionship you have provided us, and for, I stammered, gulped again. Dad cleared his throat intentionally, like he was trying to get me to remember something. "Oh yeah, I got baptized today." "Thank you for bringing me closer to you today, Jehovah, for, I couldn't find the words. Thank you for baptizing me. Thank you for letting me get baptized. Thank you for letting me sign over my life to your earthly organization. For being my shepherd and guiding me to the waters in which I was baptized today. Amen. I looked up quickly. Loretta already had her fork in hand. Her best friend, Patricia, was unfolding her roll of silverware right beside her. I looked to her side at a tall man with the kindest brown eyes opening wide behind his black glasses. He gave me a sweet smile. That was beautiful, Kai. Thank you. I looked to my father, who was less impressed. When we get home, remind me to teach you how to say a proper prayer. Mom hushed him. It was his first time saying a prayer for a group, Tim. She turned to me, a soft grin on her lips. You did great, sweetheart. Thanks, Mom. I slouched back down, started picking at my food. I glanced at Dad, who was obnoxiously staring at our waitress. She was helping another table, her body facing ours as she handed a fistful of straws to some thirsty patrons. Dad tisked. He had clearly found something objectionable about her. He always did. That little striped heart on her blouse. It's the trans flag, isn't it? I looked at her. Alan turned around too out of curiosity. Yeah, pink, blue, and white. So our waiter is a man masquerading as a woman? Lovely. Maybe she's just showing support. The more you change your body, the more you disgrace God, Hezekiah. Nobody should support that. How's everything going over here? The waitress in question appeared before us, checking in with one of her hands holding a nearly empty pitcher of iced water. Everything's fantastic, thank you. Alan smiled at her, showing human decency, something Dad couldn't afford regardless of the cost. The older man suddenly raised his hand, and my heart sunk, believing it to be the start of a confrontation. I was right. Actually, yes. Could we get a basket of bread, please? Right away. She walked off in the direction of the kitchen, and I gave Dad a quizzical look. Dad, why do you want more bread? Shh. This is a chance to leave a witness, son. Oh, God, Dad, please. Don't do what I think you're going to do. We're Jehovah's Witnesses, and we speak out in fearlessness, son. Dad, I just want to have a nice dinner with you guys. We're supposed to be celebrating, not preaching to the public. If nobody knows we're here on Jehovah's behalf, then we may as well not be here at all, Kai. I turned to my mom, the slightly more level-headed one when it came to matters like these. Mom, stop him, please. She shook her head. You're not actually going to do the bread thing to her, are you, Tim? Margaret, it's a fantastic analogy, and it gets the point across. Ah, here he comes now. The waitress showed up with a brown woven basket full of freshly heated bread buns and cups of butter. What's this? Dad looked at her with mocking irateness. I asked for bread. Her calm and professional demeanor quickly flashed into confusion. I'm sorry? Well, this is clearly a basket full of steak. Her confusion only sunk more. I beg your pardon? Dad grabbed one of the buns and held it up. It's a big, juicy steak, is it not? Her eyes were wide as dinner plates as she crossed her palms over one another and tried to comprehend the situation. She subtly shook her head. What is it, then, if it's not steak? It's bread, sir. He smiled at her. Now you're getting it. He put the bun back into the basket. When we see something differently from what is true, we are right to be called out on it, correct? She seemed to be getting the point my dad was getting at, and she didn't look too flattered by it. Is this about my pin? She shrugged the shoulder that housed the offending object, furrowed her brow as she waited for Dad's response. Just remember this. God made you a man. Men are among the strongest and most intelligent of God's creatures. Women were meant to subject themselves to men. Why would you choose subjection if it was not what was meant for you? I was born a woman. She crossed her arms, her face flushed with controlled anger. I wear this pin in honor of my best friend. He died 3 years ago. She was nearly shaking. I could tell she wanted to slap him. Every part of me was wishing she would. Instead, though, she stifled a tear and walked away quickly, making a beeline for the bathroom before chatting with another waiter and pointing in our direction. handing off the torch to someone who could handle our table, it seemed. Dad, that was, I wanted to say unbearable, embarrassing, stupid, hateful. Dad was too much of a narcissist to fill in the gap with something accurate. Right. Remember, son, we all make mistakes. What counts is having the bravery to speak up for what's right, whether it's taken the right way or not. You made a woman cry for no reason, but Jehovah is smiling down, and a seed has therefore been planted. Tim, could we just eat out once without you trying to teach moral lessons to random civilians? Margaret, it is our duty to guide sheep towards Jehovah, no matter what the shepherding may look like in the moment. She could come to our kingdom hall one day and thank me for calling her out from the darkness of her path and towards Jehovah's guiding light. If that's what you want to think, Tim, go ahead. Mom, you don't support what Dad did today, do you? She sighed, lifting up a pair of fluffy blue pajama pants out of the laundry basket beside her. I don't approve, no. I don't like the way he goes about things like that. I think it does far more harm than good. She dropped them to her lap, looking around for a moment to find the words. But he's my husband. Whether I approve of his antics or not, I have to support him. All I can do is give him a push in the right direction. But being so harsh like that is bound to turn people away from us, from God, right? She breathed in harsh, knowing this was the millionth time in her life that she was facing scrutiny on Dad's behalf. If that woman is actually one of Jehovah's future sheep, she'll find her way to him. Remember that everyone has free will, Kai. But if Jehovah's sheep will always find him eventually, then why do we witness at all? Well, we witness to call the sheep towards God. It's their choice if they want to follow. But, Kai, it's past your bedtime. Go get some sleep, all right? She was talking to me, facing my direction and giving me the command. But I knew in reality she was talking to herself. Alan's bedroom was always so immaculate compared to mine. Despite barely having room for his dresser, he had two simple bookshelves, one filled with JW literature, the other containing books of poetry and novels of the greats, Oscar Wilde, Edgar Allan Poe, Robert Frost, and dozens more. Alan loved reading, especially poetry and short stories. He loved writing, too. He held his own work in a little blue book on his desk that he wrote in during his free time, what little of it he gave himself. I had always been tempted to take a peek inside and actually read the words of my best friend, but he never let me. He'd always snatch the book away when he caught me being nosy, and he'd change the subject. So, how's baptized life treating you, Kai? Don't really know. Feels like nothing's changed. Well, you can pioneer now. I know, I thought it would be like being born again. I thought I'd physically feel my old self shedding away when I rose up out of the water. I'd suddenly have the zeal and drive to do more for God. Alan shook his head. I could have told you that wasn't going to happen. The change is gradual, not immediate. It was immediate for Jesus. Jesus was a perfect manifestation of God's love for mankind, not a teenager from Greenville. Good point. Well, at least I got baptized at all. I was starting to think it'd never happen. Alan chuckled in his year-older wisdom. You're only 18. Jesus was in his 30s. Well, you got baptized at 11. Dad always shoved that in my face. You're such good friends, and yet you don't even follow his example. You weren't ready. Every flower blooms in its own time. Your dad should know that. Didn't he get baptized in his 20s? Well, yeah, but to him it was different. His side of the family is all agnostic. He wasn't raised a witness. He said I should take advantage of the fact that I didn't have to go looking for the truth. That was born into it, so I had more time to dedicate to God. You're still your own person, though. I don't know. Am I? I feel like I didn't even do it for me. I feel like I just did it to get everyone off my back. If that were the case, Jehovah wouldn't have let you get baptized. I shrugged. You really believe that? Of course. If you weren't sincere, the elders would have picked up on that. They would have told you to wait. You're here now, and you're baptized, so that alone implies that you are ready for the plunge. I don't know. If you can only get baptized when you're ready, then why are there so many apostates? Well, that's the worst thing about apostates, Kai. They were ready, they had the truth, and they had God's love. Then they allowed self-righteousness to bubble up within their hearts. They let Satan in. The devil breeds his strongest warriors out of those who were once loyal to Jehovah. It's a reminder to guard our hearts with vigor. You're baptized now, Kai. You have to be careful. Satan is going to do his best to take you away. Temptations will soon latch on to you unlike anything you've ever seen before. Heh. And what temptations did Satan latch onto you when you got baptized? He blushed. Well, you're my best friend, so maybe it's time I told you. He grasped his own arm and nodded to the side, like it was extremely uncomfortable to even consider what he was about to tell me. I struggle with homosexual tendencies. I blushed in return. Of all the things he could have told me, I really didn't expect that. You're gay? No, he corrected quickly, nearly shouting it before vigorously shaking his head. I struggle, yes, but I won't accept the label. I'm not gay. I'm straight with extra steps. Yeah, I mean, I think I get it. I've thought about other men too before. Just never really thought it could be something I struggle with. I barely even think about girls that way. Don't let it in, Kai. He shook his head. I've let it in, and it's been eating me alive ever since. There's not a day that goes by that I don't struggle with unclean thoughts about men. Never let that curiosity get the best of you. Well, why is it wrong? Jesus never really talked about it. Jesus never talked about a lot of things, but that doesn't mean it isn't wrong. We shouldn't focus on what Jesus didn't say. It's been very clear since the dawn of man that homosexuality is wrong. But why is it wrong? Well, the pieces don't fit. When men do things with each other, they have to go through a whole process. They have to decide who's going to pretend to be the woman. They have to have lubricants since their entrances aren't meant to have anything go in there. They have to clean themselves out first so they don't cover their partner in fecal matter. It's disgusting. It's a disgrace to God's perfect arrangement of intercourse. I nodded along, hoping he couldn't see through my ambivalence. Lovemaking being more messy or difficult just because it was between men didn't seem like a reason for it to be an undoubtable sin. What about love, though? What about love? I shrugged. What if two men are in love but they just don't have intercourse? Would that still be wrong? Alan raised his eyebrows. Well, he scratched his neck. I don't know. It could be possible, right? But love should lead to intimacy. That's how Jehovah intended things to be. Well, how about this? A man and a woman. They're in love, they're married, but they've never slept together because they're both asexual. That's not wrong in the slightest, right? No, of course not. But if they were to be intimate, they could, and that's what counts. Okay, maybe the woman and the man are both disabled and can't be intimate. Specifics aside, it could happen, right? They can't be together that way. Jehovah would understand a situation like that, I'm sure. Well, then, intimacy aside, what makes two men being in love wrong? Alan looked away, his features falling still. I don't know. I felt bad. I had used my reasoning for wrongdoing. I had enlisted doubt in his mind, and as a result, I was assisting Satan in corrupting my best friend. Alan, I don't mean to tear down your walls or anything. I want to understand it too, and I never have. The Bible is clear enough that I don't have to fully understand it to respect it. God says men should not lie with men. I have to obey that. He looked melancholy, like he was somehow hoping the opposite could make sense to him. Right? But you could love a man. Alan smiled to himself and looked at me tenderly. I already do. Automatically assuming he meant his brotherly love for me, I smiled in return and went to put a hand on his shoulder. But then he looked up. 3 men, actually. Jehovah, Jesus. He opened his mouth, then turned back to me. And you. Well, at least I was included. Mornings in my home are rapid and unwavering. Monday through Friday, Dad would be getting ready for work while Mom prepared for taking the remainder of our family, namely me and Loretta, out in service. Regardless, we began every morning with the daily text before we scuttled away from the dining room table. Lori and I would bicker about who got to take a shower first, and Mom would retreat to the bedroom to finish picking service clothes and say her private morning prayer. She told me it helped her wind her emotions down before the day began, and I believed her. Every day she'd walk out of the bedroom fresh as a daisy with a pleasant smile on her face. I wished prayer had that effect on me. I figured it was something that would come with age, a result of getting to know Jehovah over a multitude of years. I thought that maybe now that I was baptized, praying would start affecting me more. I tried it that morning once I finally got into the shower, a private prayer. Nobody but me and God and the pitter-patter of water falling from the shower. When I finished, I opened my eyes, and nothing. It will happen, I reassured myself. Eventually, my eyes would open up and I'd see exactly what I got baptized for. I had complete faith in that fact. And until I could find joy in the mere act of walking into a Kingdom Hall before field service, I could at least find joy in seeing Alan there, waving at me, ready to take on the day together as we knocked on doors and performed our daily deliveries of spiritual food. Alan was smart, incredibly smart. While more than half of his brilliant mind was filled with Jehovah's Witness exclusive biblical lore, scriptures, and a Bible-based sense of right and wrong, the remainder of his brain power would often bewilder and dazzle me. In particular, his uncanny talent for gaming. For a guy who didn't give himself much free time, Alan had this ability to pick up and master almost any video game instantly. A couple seconds of watching someone on an arcade machine later, he'd step up for his turn and fuse to the controls, his nimble fingers testing each button and knob a handful of times before pressing play and blowing the fellow patrons away, racking up scores so fast and with such ease you'd swear he was a cyborg designed for mastering the digital art. I can't even describe the rush I'd get from watching him. Something about witnessing a man in his element, distraction-free, his eyes dancing across the screen rapidly, open and inhaling information like a computer, his fingers tapping, clicking, swiftly knocking around and about as though they had minds of their own and jobs they knew how to do by heart, all while his body stayed perfectly still, a suit on, separating his elegant, formal figure from the rest of the arcade-goers around us. That suit was a constant reminder of the reality of our lives. We weren't just two teenage boys out at the mall having fun on the weekend. We were two spiritual brothers who got dropped off at the mall after going in field service for the whole morning with Alan's family, waiting for my mom to reunite with me, pick us up, and take us home. It was a routine we had down pat, but field service meant formal wear, and thus my reminder. Alan rocked it, though. His tall stature only added to the elegance of his outfit. His black wavy hair perfectly framed his face, and his dark brown-rimmed glasses gave him not only an air of intelligence, but one of melancholy and mystery as well. One look at him and his savant-like skill with his fingers, you'd instantly want to know more about him. After all, if there were ever a man who I could see myself falling for, it would be Alan.